Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Gooler Loeb.
Hey, everybody. Here's something I'd like you to sit with for a moment. When you feel that flicker of, I don't know enough about a next step, a possible path, or a whole new direction, what do you do with it? Or those times when you allow yourself to ponder, I wonder what it would be like if you fill in the blank. Or when you daydream about something that you've always wanted to do, what happens next? What do you tell yourself? What do you do with those thoughts? Most of us do one of two things. We either push it down and keep grinding along the path we're already on, or we let it spiral into overwhelm. Too many options, too much noise, not enough clarity, and then sometimes we freeze. But there's another option, and it's the one this episode is about. If you've been listening to this summer series of the podcast, you know I've been talking about my clarity-driven framework, Be the CEO of Your Career, which entails being curious, staying engaged, and taking ownership throughout your career and life. Today, I want to go deeper in one of the 5 practices in that journey. Discovery. Discovery epitomizes what I refer to when describing each of the 5 practices of my framework. Discovery in this context is the ultimate form of practice. When we think about practicing something, we usually look towards achieving mastery through the repetition of practice, as in developing athletic skills or learning to play a musical instrument. Discovery as a practice can be habitual, but also nuanced in that it can tap different areas of your awareness and experiences to connect dots and fill gaps where various types of information is needed. It can show up as simply noticing something in your surroundings, asking questions, conducting research, networking, or taking a class, just to name a few. The habit or practice of discovery is refined when you are present and connected to yourself in ways that enable you to notice a gap, such as, I need more information here. And rather than allowing that gap to open up to overwhelm or some form of paralysis, you open it up and get curious about it instead. And that distinction matters. Overwhelm says, there's too much to know, so I'll avoid it. Curiosity says, there's more to know, so let me see what I can find out. Same starting point, completely different outcome. And as you can tell, discovery isn't passive. It's not waiting for the right opportunity to land in your inbox. It's proactive. It's reaching out to people, having the conversation you've been putting off, or showing up at that event, or asking the question you're a little afraid to ask. It's built on real engagement with other people and ownership of the search to fill in those gaps. I wanted you to hear what this actually looks like in a real career, not just as a concept, but as something someone did more than once. So today, I'm sharing my conversation with Jason Van Orden. Jason's story is one of my favorite illustrations of discovery because he didn't practice it once and move on. He practiced it repeatedly. When he left a stable engineering career because he realized he wasn't wired to work for someone else. When he walked away from a decade-long top 10 business podcast at what looked like its peak because he'd stopped waking up energized by it. And most recently, as he's followed his curiosity into how AI is shaping his work. Each time the pattern is the same. He noticed the gap, got curious instead of stuck, and went looking. So let's get into it now. I am so delighted to introduce my guest today, Jason Van Orden. Jason helps coaches and consultants grow their business by creating offers that scale income and impact without overloading the time and energy. He also helps his clients design messaging that highlights their unique genius so they attract more of the clients they love working with most. Since 2004, Jason has worked with over 10,000 entrepreneurs and created more than 60 online courses and programs. In 2005, he launched the first ever internet marketing podcast, Internet Business Mastery, which spent a decade as a top 10 business podcast. Please join me in welcoming Jason Van Orden. Welcome, Jason.
Hi, Tammy. So great to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. And I will tell everyone that I am a member of your Catalyst program, which we will get into talking about later. But for now, as we love to talk about the early years, so let's talk about yours and tell us a little bit about them and how they may or may not have informed where you are today.
A couple things come to mind. It's funny, earlier today, I was flipping through TikTok and somebody popped up with an Apple IIc computer, which my family used to own. In fact, we had an Apple II Plus right before that. And this was when I was like 8 or 9 years old. And shortly after that, my mom bought me a book in basic programming. And so I remember learning how to do Hello World program is like one of the first things they teach you in a programming. And then, okay, how do I can make text come up on the screen? And I was just so enamored with this idea of programming, which I think is a big reason why for my brief career as an employee, I ended up getting a degree in electrical engineering and software and was a software engineer for a few years. That didn't last because I was not meant to work for somebody else. I think I was meant to do my own thing, and I'm sure we'll get to talking about that. But another parallel path is that my father was an educator. And so I grew up watching him teach a lot and be in front of audiences a lot and speaking. And I think that really, I don't know whether by osmosis, nature, nurture, or whatever, I think I ingested a lot of interest in and skills for teaching, speaking, and that led very naturally when I started a podcast in 2005. So those things came together and incidentally, and I won't jump forward quite yet, but it was podcasting that really gave me one of my earliest leaps into successful entrepreneurialism. But yeah, it's that programmer path and that teacher path. Now, I'm no longer a programmer. However, I feel like I use my technical skills for debugging things and seeing systems, which are now my clients' businesses as systems. So I still apply a lot of that, that mental power.
Now, I'm just curious, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Alaska. A lot of my youngest years going through elementary school and into middle school, I was in the interior of Alaska, actually in a small town called North Pole, Alaska. It's not the North Pole, but the town is called North Pole.
Wow.
And yes, they have a Santa Claus house that you can go to there. It's right outside of Fairbanks, the second largest town in Alaska. I've lived all over Washington State and Utah and back to Alaska again and multiple places in each of those states and Wyoming at one point because my dad, he was also a wanderer. And I think at one point he quit being a teacher and tried his hand for a year or so as an entrepreneur and for various reasons had to go back. But that's another thing that I think I picked up from him.
Yeah.
So I can see how a lot of that wandering around and experiencing a lot of different types of people needing to make friends quickly also has worked into my career and history as well.
Wow. So I'm also curious, what interested you in electrical engineering initially? You said that when you were a kid, you had an Apple computer and you were learning programming, but specifically, what was the appeal of electrical engineering?
Yeah, so I remember having a conversation with a friend of my parents. We were on a long trip. I think it was one of the times we were moving and he was helping us drive the car. And I think I was in the car to keep him company. He was like, so what do you want to be when you grow up? I was probably 12 or 13 at the time. And I was like, I don't know. He's, what are you good at? I'm like, I'm good at math and I like science. And he said, maybe you'll be an engineer one day. Also, along with that, I've always been fascinated with space. Now, this is going to come
Ah,
around to electrical engineering. I just loved everything having to do with space. And it turns out that one of the colleges in Utah where I graduated from high school was one of the
oh,
top aerospace engineering places in the world.
oh,
And I
wow.
got a very good, in fact, I got their top scholarship. And so I thought, hey, this is perfect. I'll be able to work in space. I'm good at math. I'll be an engineer. I'll be an aerospace engineer.
Ah,
Now, turns out that lasted the first year. And I was like, this isn't quite, the classes weren't quite grabbing my attention the way I
mm-hmm.
want. By then, I was also a musician, which is another formative thing. I played sax
Oh,
from the age of 8 years old, learned guitar from my mom when I was in high school, and picked guitar back up again in college. And somewhere, and I don't even remember all the pieces, but somewhere it clicked in my mind that, oh, if I switch to electrical engineering, I will learn the skills. And I can also study software in parallel with that. And I will
yeah.
learn skills where I can design and create equipment that musicians use.
Oh,
Like
wow.
the amplifiers and the effects pedals that they have on stage that they press with their feet and it starts making a
Yeah.
cool noise with their guitar. And that is what I ended up doing. So that was my circuitous path through to electrical engineering, which ultimately was a software job in something called digital signal processing, making cool gear for musicians for a few
Oh,
years.
wow. Oh, so you really set your sights on that and saw that through.
Yeah, I thought, hey, this is cool. I'm like, I got the stable engineering job and I also get to mix in my passion for music. I was in a lot of bands from the age of 16 on, and I was like, this is cool. Everything's coming together. I'll be able to be near music, but still have this amazing job. And if I happen to make it big with my music, bonus, but I don't have to depend on that. So that's how that all
Wow.
started after college.
It's interesting, though, to hear about the different things that you were excited about and how you were able to pursue them.
Following
So
curiosity, I would say.
that's what we do.
Right.
We experiment, we play with things, and you had some support for that too, it sounds.
Definitely.
So you went to school in Utah
Mhm.
and studied, and then you worked in
And so I was
digital
writing.
signal processing.
Yeah, yeah.
And did you do that in Utah also?
Yeah, it just so happens that in Utah is a company called Digitech, and I think they're still around. And at the time,
Mhm.
they were one of the foremost creators of these guitar pedals. And I had gotten an internship there for a couple of summers and landed a really great job right out of,
Wow.
and they're in Salt Lake City. So, just 2 hours south of where I went to college, my first job. And I was like, everything's working out. This is
Wow.
great. And it was great until it wasn't. But that was my one and only job as an engineer, was
Really?
working for Digitech.
So how long did you do that job for?
I lasted about 3 years.
Oh,
Yeah, 2000 to 2003. And about a year or two in, I was getting restless. And at one point, I took the test to maybe go get an MBA. I was thinking about becoming a professor. I thought about all kinds of things
sure.
and eventually landed on, again, through following curiosity, landed on studying real estate investing to bring another thing in,
Uh-huh.
which then that was the first path towards entrepreneurship, is because I was like, oh, maybe if I do this real estate investing thing, because I was starting to realize I'm not happy being an employee. So
Yeah.
and so maybe that's the thing for me. And August 2003, I just quit my job cold turkey. I didn't have another job or anything going, but I was like, I think I can do this real estate investing thing. Here we go.
Hmm.
So I dove in to try to make it work. My mentor in real estate investing introduced me to like copywriting and marketing. And there was this
Oh.
thing that he was doing that fascinated me. And that was, in addition to doing all of his real estate investment, buying and selling houses, he was also occasionally running these local seminars, and he'd rent out a ballroom or whatever at a hotel and people would pay $100, whatever, to be there. And I remember attending one of those. I'm like, this is so cool. Look how he's like monetizing teaching and his knowledge that he's picking up. This is amazing.
Hmm.
And I started interning with him, and he introduced me to this idea of what was at the time referred to as information marketing. So selling your knowledge
Yeah.
by packaging it up at the time as CDs and tapes and seminars. And
Right. Oh, I remember all
Yeah,
that.
right.
Sure.
I got involved in a local real estate investors association, and I started realizing, and this is going to sound like another random introduction, that I was actually pretty good at marketing. And the reason I figured that out is I had been studying marketing for my band. I was like, how do I get my band to sell
Oh,
CDs, people to show up? I need a
yeah.
website, I need an email list. And so that's like early 2000s.
Yeah.
And so I was studying marketers and direct marketing, and all these real estate investors started asking me questions. And my mentor actually started asking me to write copy for him. And
Ah,
so then I figured out, oh, I enjoy this consulting thing better. And I started
yeah.
consulting, and finally the light bulb went off. I'm like, I'm going to do my own seminar. I'm going to do a 1 day workshop where it's going to be the brain dump of marketing for real estate investors.
Mm,
I'll rent out a room at a community college. I already know the audio gear thing so I can record it because I was a musician. I had all that down.
yeah.
And to wrap that story up, I ended up making $8,000 in 1 day selling tickets to that and upselling people to some other products that I had. And this is awesome. I love teaching. I just got paid to teach really well. Maybe there's something here for me.
Yeah.
And so now I recorded that and I was burning it to CDs and printing
Yeah.
out the slides as like a 3-ring binder. And I
Wow.
was going online and participating in forums. This is like 2004 at that time.
Wow.
Sell this course to people, and I'd print them out, take them to the the post office, put them in a box and send them off to people.
And I love the way you're telling the story almost like with a giggle behind it. Can you believe I did all that?
I know
Oh,
it seems so random sometimes when I'm telling the story, but it also is interesting, which I'm sure why people partly like your show is seeing the breadcrumbs that are in somebody's path that led them to do what they do, right? So
yeah. But it's fascinating. Here you are, you quit your job in 2003, and within a year and a half, you've created this whole other idea and you're putting it into motion and it's working.
yeah,
And you also figured out that there was something else you really like to do. And what I also think is interesting is in the engineering job, even though you set your sights on something that you really wanted to do for the love of music and being a musician, you angled that job in that way, but you realized I don't like working for
right.
anybody. And so to recognize that young and then to take that leap, there's so many people out there who won't let themselves do that, even if they're miserable.
Right, because we're
So,
so programmed to play it safe, follow the traditional path to retirement, whatever. Yeah.
yeah. So I tip my hat to the younger you for having taken that leap and you leaned into some things and it sounds like you gave it your all. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I was determined to make it work.
yeah, and it did. So then you were an information marketer, teacher, all those things. And that developed over time. And about a year later, you started podcasting, right?
Yeah, the podcasting thing came because I needed to find other ways to sell my course. I'd sold it locally and there's no social media yet or anything.
Right.
And YouTube wasn't a thing. Like podcasting was just starting to show up at the end of 2004. So as I was looking into more digital marketing, I was like, if I can sell this on the internet, that opens up a wider audience. And so I was devouring information, and this one newsletter that I was subscribed to for musicians about
Mhm.
marketing. He mentioned the word podcasting in there. And I was like, what is that podcasting thing? And I Googled it, and Google tried to correct me because it didn't know what podcasting was yet. You know how Google used to say, did you mean fly casting? Or like, nope, not a fisherman. Anyway, I eventually found enough of these geeky blog posts about all these people who were really intrigued by this podcasting thing before iTunes had even picked it up. Apple hadn't even picked it up. A lot of people don't realize Apple did not invent podcasting. And I was like, this is cool. Like the audio part of me understood that. The programmer part of me
Yeah.
understood all the tech behind it because it used to be very technical to start a podcast. The
Yeah.
marketer in me saw all the possibilities there. And a friend of mine, we were talking one day about it, and I was just like, why don't we start a podcast? And he had also quit his job, was selling stuff on eBay. I was selling my course online and doing a bit of consulting. And we'll just start a podcast and tell our story about trying to find freedom as two guys who used to be employees. We had no idea what we were starting at the time. His first podcast ever about internet marketing and internet business.
Wow.
And next thing we knew, within a year or two, we had this audience that just exploded in there, like devouring our, like, hey, this is awesome, guys. We want to get out of employment too.
Yeah.
And so that's how I became, was through starting. I put up a tutorial site that took off for a while. For a while, I was like the business podcasting guy. Like people would
Mhm.
book me to speak. I got a book deal to write a book called Promoting Your Podcast, which you can find now if you look carefully, but it's all out of date. So I don't suggest buying it.
In other words, don't take that advice anymore.
No. The one thing that might still be relevant is I was the first person to basically talk about SEO for iTunes for the Apple podcast
Oh,
directory.
wow.
Everything else in there is just, it'd be funny to read. Like, I'm sure none of that stuff exists.
But it almost sounds like you were looking for things that didn't quite exist yet. And the minute they existed, you jumped on it.
Yeah, that I really like that reflection. Yeah, that's true.
It's really funny. It's like you're one of the first podcasters.
Yep. Early geeks that we get together at our little conferences and we'd listen to each other's shows. And bit by bit, it's taken a while. And now everybody wants to have a podcast or be on podcasts, and which is awesome. I'm glad that it has become this very legitimate medium for.
Sure. And so you were still in Utah at the time when you were doing all that.
Yeah, let's see. So when I started that podcast, I was in Utah. Shortly after that, moved to New York City because my wife at the time was going to go to grad school here.
Okay.
And I had visited some big cities. I had spent some time in Paris and fell in love with the big city vibe, even though I'd been this Alaska kid. And it was good for me because just as podcasting was taking off, I was here in a big city where there were like plenty of people to connect with. And we put on a conference at one point, and there's a lot of things to help get things going. And then when Internet Business Mastery started taking off, because our listeners started saying, hey, do you guys coach? Do you have courses? Like, hey, we want the step-by-step. You're so inspiring to listen to, but where's the step-by-step? So then I started creating programs, just basically, okay, here's what I've learned about marketing and entrepreneurship over the last few years. And then that became my primary business for probably about at least a decade. And it was a top 10 business show during that time. And that was a lot of fun too, until it wasn't.
Is that how you moved out of that? It became not fun?
Yeah, so the pinnacle of that was 2014, moved back to Paris. At the time, I had a 2-year-old daughter and my wife, and we were flexible enough. Hey, we'd always wanted to live in Paris. And so, hey, let's make it happen. The business is doing well. We're flexible with our schedules. We had set that goal. It's funny, like when I was going to do my first real estate deal, I motivated myself by putting a check made out to myself on the bathroom door, trip to Paris. And I think I put $3,000, $4,000, which was plenty at the time.
Yeah.
Changed now, and on that trip, we were in Montmartre and we were sitting at a cafe. And I remember very distinctly, like these colorful tables that we were sitting at, and it was up some stairs, and Sacre-Cœur was up here above us on the hill. And I remember just walking around that neighborhood going, I would love to live in this neighborhood. The first apartment we got when we went to Paris was just down the stairs from that cafe. And when I realized that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is amazing, full circle thing.
Wow.
Now, awesome, loved it. I should have been happy. And look, I'm so grateful I got to live in Paris. But by the end of that time, I was noticing like I am not fulfilled. Something's off. I'm not waking up energized to do this business every day. It's not doing it for me. It took me a couple years or so to figure it out. Thankfully, I was able to give myself a sabbatical for a while. But ultimately, what I figured out was, one is I just needed to pursue something different. I'd been doing this.
Yeah.
But number two, by then, hey, here's how to market online, to start a business online had become this thriving industry. And it had gotten really noisy, and lots of people, what was often referred to as the bro marketers now, using messaging. Hey, you too can make a lot of money online.
Yeah.
And it was just escalating. I'm like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
A few years later, and through a lot of more experimentation, landed on, I want to take what I've been doing and help people get their ideas out there.
Yeah.
Because some of the students I really loved working with the most were the ones that, yes, they want to start a business to get out of their job 9 to 5, but in doing that, they're like, I have a story I got to share. I've got a skill. I've got a thing. I have to get this out in the world to help more people, because here's my story of losing 100 pounds, and here's my story of becoming a successful architect or whatever. And so it was like, oh, that's natural extension. I'm just going to start working with established coaches and consultants, because the world needs more of these amazing ideas, more of these people to reach those that they serve best. And now podcasting and the internet and social media allows for that. So I will just pull from my last dozen or so years of experience now and consult them, make courses and stuff for them. And that's where I am here today now, I guess almost a decade later. I can't believe it. It flies.
Yeah. So how long did you live in Paris for?
1 year. Yeah.
Uh,
You can get a 1 year visa. And then at that point, you'll need to like renew and start pursuing. And at one
mhm.
point, we're like, hey, maybe we'll become expats. Maybe that'll be the thing. Though by the end, we were missing family and friends and
Yeah.
wanting. But so after the year, we're like, oh, what do we want to do next? I don't know. Let's go back to the States and flew
Mhm.
back to New York, where my wife, at the time her sister lived here.
Uh-huh.
We're like, hey, we'll go visit them for a couple of weeks. And when we came back to New York, we're like, oh, we love it here. It's been everything we miss about New York.
Yeah.
Apartment came available in their building. We're like, okay, this just feels too right. Our
Yeah.
girl will be able to grow up with their girls like their sisters.
Yeah.
Let's just settle back down to New York. And so we did.
Yeah. I see. So you've been in New York ever since then?
Ever since then, yeah. So came back
Yeah.
in 2015, 10 years.
Uh-huh. Wow. Yeah. I love hearing though how you develop something and then you realize that something wasn't feeling right. Not that I love that something wasn't feeling right. I don't mean that, but that you gave yourself some time and space to think about what else do I want? And it wasn't like I think sometimes when people realize that something isn't feeling right, they think they have to throw it all away and
Right.
start with something totally new. I hear that a lot. And then I hear people say, I don't want to start all over or it's too late, that kind of thing. And and what I love about your example is that you didn't throw it all away. You took what you had and you developed it further. You eliminated the things that just weren't doing it for you anymore and you further developed the things that you were doing that you enjoyed and you applied it to a group of clientele that you would enjoy working with. And I know that you've developed a number of things over the years that have also been very satisfying and rewarding as well. I know you have a number of partnerships. You run some very large networking groups, great ways of connecting with people, great ways of getting new clients. Tell us a little bit about some of your activities.
Yeah. So when I moved back to New York and I was building the consulting business for coaches and consultants, and I was thinking back over internet business mastery and what did I do really well? Where are some
Mm-hmm.
places that I could have done better and maybe held
Mm-hmm.
myself back? And
Hmm.
one thing that jumped out at me was I had not been a consistent networker. I was fortunate that the show became popular. So if I went to conferences, I was often speaking, and then people would just come to me and, hey, Jason, been so excited to meet you and stuff. But then I wouldn't keep up with people and I wasn't deliberate about it. And part of that is because I'm very naturally an introvert and it takes me a lot
Mm-hmm.
of energy to connect with people. But I knew that if I could get better at that relationship part of things and figure out how to make it work for me, that was going to open up so many more things. And I was separate. It was hard to separate myself. Who am I if I'm not Jason from Internet Business Mastery? And here I am trying to go to a
Right.
different audience that doesn't know me as well. And I need to like distance myself from the make money online space.
Mhm.
Networking was going to be a key piece of that. And in there is when I met a mutual friend of ours, Dory Clark, great networker. She invited me to one of her dinners and associated with her and became friends with her. And I remember noticing, wow, Dory, she identifies as an introvert, but she is so good at this networking.
Yeah.
So I started observing her. I think bought an ebook she had at the time. I remember texting her a few times about it, and she gave me some great advice to help not be so overwhelmed by it. And anyway, then met Mike Roderick, also a
Uh,
great
yeah.
networker, learned a lot from him. Anyway, this
Yeah.
all culminated in, I mentioned him because when the pandemic hit, he and I had always been looking for another project to do and clearly people are going to be needing new ways to connect
Yeah.
because who knows
Yeah.
how long this is going to go. And so we're like, hey, let's try an experiment. And I wanted to stretch myself as a networker. I'm like, okay, if I can run a networking group that feels good to people like me as well, like I'll learn a lot and that'll stretch me. And here we are 3+ years later, it's
Yeah.
still going and I still enjoy doing it to bring together content creators and coaches and consultants for collaborating and meeting each other,
Yeah.
creating content and interviews and stuff. So that's one big thing that's been going on recently and has been, I think if anyone listening to this, if you're wanting to break into a space or stand out in a different way, if you're willing to be the person who organizes people and bring them together, most people don't think to do that, don't think
No.
they know how to, or just don't. And if you're the one, like, it's an immediate like value, easy, makes it easier to connect with people. You're immediately in a position of having some visibility and authority and credibility by just
Yes.
the person that's doing that. So
Yeah.
highly recommend that as an experiment if somebody's looking for something to
Yeah.
try.
And that's how I first, I didn't meet you directly that way, but that's how I first became aware of who you were, because I used to go to a lot of those
Mm.
networking meetings
Yeah.
probably 3+ years ago. And I know, yeah, Dory does those dinners. I don't know if she's still doing them now as much, but that I always thought that was a really intriguing way to get in front of people and make connections and still be able to maintain your introversion at the same time in a way.
Yeah.
And so I've had Dory and Mike Roderick both as guests on this podcast. So they've been able to tell their story. So tell us more how this developed from 2015 onward, how you
Yeah.
developed your consulting work and the Catalyst program, which I'm in. And I know there's a number of other things that you've done.
Yeah. So yeah, just like everything else, things just unfolded by following
Mhm.
curiosity, experimenting with things, seeing what worked. And it may sound like that just came easily. Like there've been plenty of points of deliberation. What the heck am I doing? Who am I to try
Yeah,
that? Look, I've had plenty of head junk and still do to like work through this
sure.
process. But I went into doing one-on-one consulting, even though Internet Business Mastery was all like digital courses and group programs and
Right,
more scalable, so to speak.
right.
But I knew that I wanted to work closely in businesses with established consultants and coaches to figure out where I could create the best value and what were the
Mhm.
strengths I could bring, what were the things that they needed that I could really help and provide for. And did a podcasting course at one point, eventually two, and eventually started making some courses as well. But what I started noticing were a couple strengths that I had. One was that I was good at helping my clients to organize and communicate their intellectual property in a way that attracted the people that they wanted to work with, in a way that really communicated what was unique about them and the value that they presented, in a way that made marketing and sales a lot easier for them. And one program I had at the time that kind of spawned into Catalyst was I had a course, a group program on here. I'm going to help you launch a pilot version of your group program. So it was like for coaches and consultants that wanted to go from one to many business.
Mhm.
But I didn't want to hook my name to I'm the online course guy. Like I knew that had
Right,
limited reach. And
right.
even though I'm good at it and it served me well to be that guy,
Mm,
I have more shifted my brand to being a strategist, a growth
mm,
strategist, because, and this goes back to that programmer systems thinking, like I'm good at zooming out, helping my clients see what's going on in their business and based on their goals, their resources, their values, their vision, finding the best path forward for growth in a way that aligns best
mm,
with them. And eventually that there's a few different iterations of coaching programs, but eventually led to Catalyst
mm.
is like a growth, I don't know, incubator or accelerator that you can come into and work with me for however long makes sense. We basically go through these iterations of dig into your business, figure out what you should be focusing on next, give you an action plan. Here are a lot of tools and resources and templates that I've created to help you. I'll
Mhm.
give you support as you go through that action plan, weekly group calls and access to me and getting feedback. Once you finish that, great. Let's identify the next thing.
Mhm.
We'll just iteratively stack up the growth elements in
Mhm.
your business. So it might be, tweaking messaging for a little while, then figuring out
Mhm.
what's working. Okay, great. Let's deploy that. Okay, we need to get a new offer. Okay, that's the next thing we're going to focus on. Okay, let's get that
Mhm.
out there. But it's not so customized that I get pulled in a lot of directions.
Right.
I've organized my intellectual property in a way that I am able to give a customized roadmap to each person through my system, my
Yeah.
signature method, Scalable Genius, but without it becoming overwhelming to me. And that's just because over
Right.
time, I've built up this library of mini trainings and templates and frameworks and things that I can just point them to
Yeah.
and give them access to me in the moments that it matters most to give the guidance and the strategy and things like that. That's the kind of thing I'm really excited about helping my clients create one of many things are these scalable programs where you can also work with people long term and make a really big impact in their
Yep.
life, their business, their career, whatever the
Yeah.
case may be. Not making them dependent on you, but just like however
No.
long that value makes sense, like you're
Right.
set up to do that.
Right.
So that's a bit about how
Yeah.
Catalyst.
Yeah. I feel like we could do like an advertisement for it right now. No, but I like the way it's set up and the way it works, exactly as you just described it. There's a lot of structures, a lot of resources, but then there is that space in which you can tap into people's individual needs at times, but yet there's so many great resources that we can access, that we can take those customized conversations with you and then tap into the other resources that are there, as well as the other people who are also participating, who are also very experienced people who bring a lot to the table as well. I just really appreciate what you've created there, and also the way you keep adding to it as well. And part of that is from what I've seen, is you're also feeding off of what people are asking you for and really giving people what they ask for and creating from there.
Yeah.
So it feels very organic in some ways. In a way, it's almost got a life of its own in some ways, and you're feeding it and giving it a lot of care.
Yeah, absolutely. I love creating new tools. Like every time there's a new thing to solve for a client or a new way to solve it, I think about, okay, how can I organize this and test it, but then put it into a format where
Yeah.
it's easy to be reused
Yeah.
again and
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
creating a tool out of it, creating an
Yeah.
action checklist with it, having the mini training that goes along with it so that you can do things once and have it benefit many times, which goes back to that very first marketing course I did for real estate investors. Like one of the
Yeah.
biggest things I'd learned at that point is, oh, you can really monetize your knowledge if you learn how to do things once and then have it benefit you, your intellectual property benefit you for a while. Not that
Right.
you don't have to refresh things.
Oh, yeah.
You're not customizing things all the time. You're not having to be
Right.
on the phone for every moment for things to move forward for your
Right.
clients. You're able to give them tools that allow them to be even more independent with
Right.
time because they're learning how to use these things to
Right.
think in a new way. And
Mhm.
hopefully we'll come back to those frameworks at times
Yeah.
of operating like.
Yeah, and yet it does always stay fresh because you're seeing how different people use those tools and frameworks as they apply them to their own business. So it's not like a Groundhog Day kind of thing.
Right.
It's always staying fresh. I think it's great. I think it's great. Is there anything more that you want to share with us about your current business that people should know about?
In line with everything we've talked about, the next curiosity that is working its way in is
Yeah.
artificial intelligence. It feels a lot like when I discovered podcasting, where it's, oh, this intrigues me. My programming background understands it well. The marketer and teacher in me sees all kinds of applications. And this is going to be it's already way more powerful, I think, than podcasting. Not that podcasting isn't amazing, but there's so many awesome ways to use AI to amplify what you do without and still stay authentic. It's not,
Yes.
oh, AI is just writing all this stuff for me. I write every word of my content, but I save hours with my content because of all the ways I use AI throughout
Right.
the rest of the process. And I love creating prompts that I
Right.
can hand to clients. It's okay, this is going to help use this prompt, fill in the stuff related to
Yes.
you, and it's going to help your thinking. And I use AI every day, essentially talk to myself in a way.
Mhm.
And I think it's just amazing. So I'm excited to see what comes from that. And I
Yeah.
love more and more of my brand to be attached to helping coaches and consultants and authors scale their impact using also AI-based
Yeah.
solutions, along with all the frameworks that I've
Yeah.
developed over time.
Yeah.
So that's very exciting to think.
Yeah, and I appreciate your excitement about that because I could see where those of us who are of a different generation in some ways and remember using things like typewriters.
I used a typewriter when I was 6.
Yeah, I used one. I always say my computer in college was a Smith Corona.
Nice.
So
Awesome.
it's great to hear your enthusiasm for that and blending that, that it's not about replacing your own authentic voice with it, but using it as a tool in a certain way and being able to really support people and show people how to do that because you're staying on top of it is really helpful. Now, if somebody wanted to work with you or learn more about your work, what would be the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, my website is jasonvanorden.com. You can always email me. Happy to connect anytime, jason@jasonvanorden.com. If you want to follow along, I often will share early versions of new frameworks and things through my email newsletter, for instance, subscribing to that on my site. And I'm a big fan of giving a lot of value before people work with me, give them the experience of what it's like to work with me. Like they said, oh, let's do this engagement. I think you get a lot of value if you
Yes.
follow along with me, if you're a person that resonates with anything we've been talking about here. And then when it makes sense, we can always talk about if working together makes sense or not. But those would be my recommendations. Email me, visit my site and check it out, or just get on my email newsletter. And if you're interested in networking, you're a subject matter expert or a content creator who wants to come check that out, you can also email me and I'll be happy to hook you up with an invitation to that too.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And so, in wrapping up here, I'd love to ask you one more question, and that is a lot of people listening in are thinking about what's next for them. And I'd love to know what would be a key piece of advice that you might give somebody who's trying to explore that territory of their next steps.
Yeah, my advice would be the thing that showed up again and again in my stories and anecdotes, and that is follow your curiosity. Curiosity is a channel to your intuition. I think it's one of the ways intuition speaks to us. We get advice like follow your passion, find your passion. If you can make money with your passion, you're set. And yeah, I think that's a really fraught advice, but follow your curiosity is advice anybody can do. And you're never not going to get something out of following your curiosity.
Yeah.
Even first it doesn't seem like it.
Yeah.
So that's some big advice that I offer. And it has the benefit of your interest is going to be that much more into it when you're following what you're curious about. It's especially important for somebody like me who has ADHD, because if it doesn't interest me, I'm going to drop it like a hot potato.
Yeah. Yep. Very good. That's great advice. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your comment about following your passion, because I think you're better off following your curiosity. I agree with that.
Yeah.
So Jason, thank you so much for being here today. It was really fun to unpack your story a little further and sharing it with all of us.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thanks for taking me through that journey. It was fun to remember some of those things. I appreciate the invitation to be on your show.
What I love about Jason's story is that it gives you permission to not have this figured out once and for all. Discovery isn't something you graduate from. You'll come back to it probably more than once in your career, and honestly, in other parts of your life too. This is the same practice that shows up when someone's approaching retirement and facing a whole new set of choices about how they want to spend their time, what role work still plays, what they're curious about next. The questions change. The practice, staying grounded, getting curious, going out and gathering real information instead of guessing or spiraling, stays exactly the same. So here's your CEO of your career move for this week. Pick one thing you've been wondering about: a path, a role, a possibility, and instead of researching it alone at your laptop, go talk to a person about it. One informational networking conversation, one outreach to your local library's reference librarian, one honest question to someone who's been there, done that already. That's discovery in action. If this episode resonated with you, the best way to stay connected with this work is to join my email list. That's where I share the deeper reflections and resources that don't always make it into the podcast. You can sign up at tammygoolerloeb.com. Next time, we'll focus into the next practice in the CEO of your career framework. Synthesize and focus. What to do with all that information once discovery has done its job and you're staring down more options than you know what to do with. I'll be sharing my conversation with Mira Brancu, who's got a great story about cutting through all that noise and finding the signals. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.
Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Gooler Loeb.
Hey, everybody. I am so delighted to introduce my guest today, Erica Holthausen. Erica.
Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Gooler Loeb.
Hey, everybody. I am so delighted to introduce my guest today, Erica Holthausen. Erica.